we started learning about errors in measurement, and last class we learned about random errors. Random errors creep into any measurement mainly because of an external influence. This external influence could be the omnipresent noise or some interference, right, from other sources. So, when we have random errors, we saw that even if I have my input not changing, my reading will change because the external interference or noise would add up to the input, and when we start measuring at different points of time, we will get different values. So, if the only way that we can handle random errors in measurement is to take as large number of readings as possible and then find out the average value. So, we find the average value as 1 by n sigma j equal to 1 to n Vj, where Vj are the measurement points, measurement values, right. And in the last class we also saw that the average value is the best value, right, in two different sense, where the sum of deviations of individual values from the average value is 0 and sum of the squares of the deviation is minimum, right. So, we that way the average value we assume it to be the best value, right. And then whatever be the individual values, the difference between the actual measured value and the computed average value is the difference, right, at every point. We call this as d1, d2, dn. So, again I will have j equal to 1 to n several. Now, when you have a random error, you want to express how much of random error there was, right. So, one way of expressing the random errors is that I have random errors, my average value is V bar and I have deviation plus or minus d, right. Okay. We saw that there are three possible ways of expressing this deviation. The first one is peak deviation. We take the maximum in the deviations, you will get two values, positive maximum and negative maximum, right. In general, we do not have symmetrical positive and negative maximum. Sometimes people do artificially introduce, but in general we will not have. And for certain type of measurements where randomness would invariably creep in, right, we also go for what is known as unipolar deviation, right. And this deviation is known as tolerance. In accuracy we called the true value, the difference between the true value and the measured value, right. That is also sort of deviation from the true value, my measured value is different, right. There we call it as error or accuracy, here we call it as, we do not call it as error, we call it as tolerance, because something that we can tolerate, right, these kind of deviations. Specifically manufactured mechanical components, right, most of the time you would not have bipolar tolerance, but unipolar tolerance. One of the d's, either plus d or minus d, would be 0, right. You cannot tolerate positive d or you cannot tolerate negative d, depending upon what product being machined or what product is being made, right. So, when we have this, so this is known as the tolerance. So we have unipolar, we have bipolar, right. The second way of expressing the deviation is take the average value of the deviation. Of course, we know average value would be 0 because sum of deviations would be 0. So, we take the average value of mod of d, we drop the polarity, right, but this is normally not, this is d bar, not used. This is used extensively in manufactured components. Average deviation, even though mathematically it is a nice entity, but practical utility is, then we looked at this as a DC plus AC, right, and then we said okay, now I am representing the DC with the average value, the AC I can represent by its RMS value. So, the DRMS, right, we also put a special signal sigma RMS, right. The DRMS, as far as we electrical engineer are concerned, is makes sense, but mathematically we found that this is not really correct if I take the RMS value, because in the RMS value we do sum up to n and divide by 1 by n, right, d square, right, root mean square. Because of the fact that I have only n minus 1 independent deviations in n variates, right. So, we put 1 by n minus 1 and then we call this as standard deviation, d standard, the symbol is sigma, right. As long as n is large, either I use the standard deviation or RMS deviation, this difference will be very very small, it really does not matter. Now, once we get the average value, either the peak deviation or standard deviation, right, what do we do with the data? I have 100, 200, 300 measured data points, right. Sometimes today's, of course, we can use a computer, collect even 100,000 data points, okay. So, it is not a, now n is not no longer a problem, I can get as many n as I want. So, these values I actually measured V1, V2, V3, Vn. So, we just do not want to throw it away, we want to keep it and make some sense out of it, right. One way is we can plot like this, I can put n versus Vj, right. Of course, I will get a, it gives some information, right, on what is my average and what are all the peaks and how the variation is going on, but it is not a concise way of representing all the variations that I have in my measured data, right. So, people looked at it and then they said okay, we will represent it in a different fashion. We take Vj in the x axis and the number of times Vj, I will call it a small n of Vj. Let us say I am measuring 100 microvolts, how many times I got 100 microvolts, how many times I got 99.9 microvolts, right. So, this would be something like, let us say, I need not, right, like this. but this would not be very nice to look at, right, because each value might have occurred only once. Exactly 100 microvolt I would have got only one, right. So these dots would not really make such a nice picture. Then what they thought, okay, I will take a particular value and then plus delta V minus delta V and then represent the number. Now the number will increase. Let us say how many times I have got values between 99 microvolts and 101 microvolts, right. Now it will not be just one, right, I may have 10 or 12 readings, right. So if we do that, then we may get a diagram like this, right. So this may be something like 20 times, this is 12 times, this is 6 times, this is 8 times and so on. I am giving some arbitrary numbers. So when we represent the data, measured data like this, this tells me the history of the measurement, right. I have made measurements of so many numbers and out of which between 99 microvolts 100 microvolts I have 20 readings, right. That is a historical fact, right. So the diagram itself is called histogram. Now if I give actual numbers, right, that would really be not very easy to compare, right. Let us say in one measurement I have made 100 readings, in another measurements I have made 150 readings or 200 readings, right, 100 and 200, and in a particular case between a particular value V1 plus or minus delta V, I got 20 here and I got 27 in when I get 200 values, right. There are two, one for the first one for 100 it is 20, for 200 it is 27. Now without the fact that I have this 100 and 200, I might misinterpret that 27, right, is higher than 20. Now we all know, right, if I got 20 readings out of 100, that is much better than 27 readings out of 200, right. So we do not put the actual number of times that we got the reading, we divide by the total readings that we got, right. Now of course if I do that, for 100 I will get 0.2, for 200 I will get 0.135. Now I know 27 readings is not as good as 20 in the previous case. So we make this every number divided by n, right, and obviously none of these values would be, could be more than 1 because all numbers add together has to be n, right. So each value would always be less than 1, it would be a fraction, right, it would be a fraction, it cannot be more than 1, right. Now if I look at this, I have 100 readings out of which 20 readings have come between 99 microvolts and 101 microvolts, right. Let us say this is 100 microvolts and this is plus 1 microvolts 101, this is 101 microvolts and this is minus delta V is 99 microvolts. So between 99 microvolts and 100 microvolts I got 20 readings out of the total 100 readings I have taken, right. So I have 20 readings of total 100 readings or total n readings, does not matter. I can now put it in another way, right. If I get 20 readings out of 100 readings for a particular range, I know that is the probability of getting a reading within that range, right. what is the probability of getting a reading within 99 microvolts and 101 microvolts when I make 100 readings? 20 readings, right. So now the y axis is no longer n of Vj, it is probability of getting Vj plus or minus delta V, right, whatever the width I choose, right. Okay. So the diagram is also known as probability distribution diagram, right. So if I add all these numbers, what will I get? I will get 1, because numerator will also be n, total number of readings that I have taken, denominator will also be n, I will get, and so probability of getting all the values is 1, that is also perfect, right. So histogram and probability distribution, there is slight difference. In the histogram we represent the numbers, actual numbers of the deviations that we got, and in a probability distribution function, we probability distribution histogram we divide by n, that is the only difference, right. Now this is fine, this gives me really very nice impression when I look at the diagram, right. If I get another reading, let us say I have something like this, right. So the moment I look at these two, I know more random errors are here, because I have large number of distribution in my represented in my measurement. This is Vj, and this is, let us say, either n of Vj or probability of Vj, right. It would be nice if we can represent this not as this stepwise functions, but a nice curve, right, something like this, right. Okay. People try to fit a curve for measured data like this, right, and you can go through the history and see there is a lot of proposals that have been made, but finally for almost 100 years now we choose a function, right, given by a mathematician called Gauss, and so it is known as Gaussian function, right. The Gaussian function is e power minus x square, right. Okay. So of course if x is equal to 0, I will get 1, right, anything power 0 is 1, right, and when x is plus infinity or minus infinity, I will get 0, because 1 by e power infinity would be infinity and 1 by infinity would be 0, right. So this is also known as the bell shaped function, because it looks like a bell, right. But typically if I look at this curve and this curve, I do not think that we can say perfectly that fits. Number one, this curve tells me that however farther I go from 0, either a direction, right, I am going to get some value, but practically if I am measuring 100 microvolts, what is the probability that I will get 1 microvolt? Almost 0, right. Even 10 microvolts, almost 0. When I measure 100 microvolts, maybe my noise is 10 or 20 microvolts, I may get readings from 80 to 120 or even 60 to 140, something like that. I will never get, when I measure 100 microvolts, 300 microvolts, right. But this curve tells me that there is a probability that I will get 300 microvolts, but because we do not have anything better, right. For a very long time people, as I said, tried elliptic function, all sorts of things, right, to fit practical data, but Gaussian is the one that comes very closest, even though it is not the perfect one, it is the closest one. So, we get the Gaussian function. Now, the Gaussian function, if I look at this curve and I look at this curve, I see I have to shift, right, I have to shift it on the x axis, and I also should make it such that, what is the other condition, I need all this when I sum up must go to 1. What do we mean by summing up all this? The area under the curve, right. So, there are two things that I have to do to the Gaussian function, right. So, that that function fits with the measured data, right. Again, it is quite simple mathematically, we do not write e power minus x square, we say that probability of Vj plus or minus delta V is equal to 1 by root 2 pi into sigma into e power minus x Vj minus V bar whole square by 2 sigma square. Right. So, if I put this, sigma becomes a standard deviation, V bar is the average value, right. So, I shift it to V bar, I scale it by sigma, right. So, this distribution has been used so many times and almost become a standard, not almost become a standard, right, it has become a norm, right. So, the Gaussian distribution is also known as standard, like the standard deviation, it is known as standard distribution or normal distribution, right. When somebody say the measured data fits standard distribution, you know automatically they mean that it is Gaussian function which has been fit to the distribution. Similarly, when I say normal distribution, right, it again means it is Gaussian distribution, right. The reason why Gaussian function is still taken as the standard, right, lies in the fact, now if I take the average value, obviously average value may or may not occupy the peak, it does not matter, right, and then I start moving away from the average value, right. So, if I look at the number of readings of sigma V bar plus or minus 1 sigma, right. So, I look at this, let us say is V bar somewhere here, this is my V bar, and then from the V bar I go to 1 sigma here, 1 sigma here, right, I just expand, okay. The area under the Gaussian distribution function would be 0.68, so I will get 0.68 of n, where n is the total, it is 0.6835, let us not worry about too many decimal points, right. So, almost 68% of the total measured values will come within 1 sigma value, 1 standard deviation value, which is more or less a practical consideration, right. If I have, let us say 100 microvolts is my average value and standard deviation is 4 microvolts, right. So, which means most of my readings would lie between 96 to 104, right. That is what Gaussian function also says, right. The other best thing is if I take number of readings V bar plus or minus 3 sigma, right, this is almost 0.99 n, 99% of, right. Even though, as I said, if I am measuring 100 microvolts and I fit a Gaussian function to it, that says that there is a probability of getting some readings at 0 microvolts, right, but that probability is so small we can neglect it, right. The probability of getting 99% of all the readings within plus or minus 3 sigma is so high, right, and we really do not have to, we can sort of neglect that I am going to get a probability for a reading of infinite microvolts, right. So that will be so small. That is another reason why Gaussian distribution as a standard distribution or a normal is taken as a standard distribution or normal distribution, right. So when we have errors, right, we can have errors in measurement due to the system, we called it a systematic error. We can have errors creep into the measurement due to the instrument itself, we call it as instrument errors, and we learned that both systematic error and instrument errors are calculable and compensatable, and we give them in terms of a percentage, right. So, and we also said instrument errors are always given in terms of full scale and not out of reading, right, and when full scale error is given, it also specifies the class of the instrument, right, and the systematic errors and the instrument errors combined together gives the accuracy in measurement. Now, we also learned now that it is possible that I have a perfect system, I have an instrument with 0 errors, but I can still get errors in my reading because of the external influence, right. That we have random errors, right. When we have random errors, we indicate the random errors in terms of deviation, right. When we give peak deviation, it is always given in the actual units, right. If I am going to give a deviation of the diameter of a rod that is being manufactured, right, it is always given, let us say 100 millimeter diameter plus or minus 100 micron, right, or plus 0 micron minus 100 micron, right, unipolar or bipolar. If it is some other type of measurement, let us say I am measuring values of resistances, 100 ohm resistors, I have 100 numbers and I started measuring, one may be 100 ohms, another may be 101 ohm, the third one will be 98.5 ohms and so on. Then I take all these 100 values, get the average value, and then I can either give the peak deviation or most of the time standard deviation, right. When we give standard deviation, right, it is possible to express the standard deviation in terms of a percentage, right. So, when we put percentage sigma, it is the actual sigma divided by the average value into 100, right. If it is a 100 ohm resistor nominal value and the RMS deviation I got is 1 ohm, right, then 1 ohm divided by 100 ohm into 100, that would be 1% tolerance, right. When we say tolerance, we automatically mean that it is deviation, that is what we are representing, not accuracy, right. So, when we give tolerance, accuracy we always give in terms of error, and it is always given in percentage error, right. When we give tolerance, we do not call it as accuracy, we call it as precision. This again has come from the manufacturing point of view, right. If I am manufacturing a washer with an inner diameter of 110 millimeter, right, 1 centimeter hole I am going to put, right, and then I make 100,000 washers, right. How precisely I can replicate this washer, right, is what is given in terms of the tolerance, right. If my all the washers are exactly 10 millimeter, right, not 1 micron above, not 1 micron below, 10.000 millimeter, then I am a very precise fellow, I am a precision manufacturer, right. So the tolerance is identified as precision, right. Precision, we do not say it is an error, we say deviation. I wanted 10 millimeter diameter washer, but it is not 10 millimeter, it is 10 millimeter minus 100 micrometers, right, 9.900 millimeters. Okay. So I am deviating from what I expected. In deviation, we can give the peak deviation, we can give the standard deviation, right. Peak deviation is actual, always actual is given, standard deviation can be percentage, right. Standard deviation can be in terms of a percentage. If I look at these two, accuracy and precision, and I look at standard deviation given in percentage, error in percentage, sometimes we may get confused which is which, right, which is which. So it is bounden duty that when you say I have the measured value is 100 microvolts and error is plus or minus 1%, and I have plus or minus 4% standard deviation, right. So if you are going to give both, you must specify which is which, because in sometimes you may have both. The instrument itself has 1% error in measurement, and because of the external influence you had random errors, you with that instrument you have measured 100 values, got the average value as 100 microvolts and standard deviation is 4%, right. So we say this is an error, either you say standard deviation or tolerance. If you do not specify anything, I simply say my measurement results are 100 microvolts plus or minus 1%, it automatically means it is an error. The error could have come up because of the systematic error or instrument error, and it is not random error. If I have random error, I have to specify that it is a tolerance or it is a standard deviation when I give in terms of percentage. For example, if I give 100 microvolts plus or minus 110 microvolts, I need not specify that it is an error, right, because error is never given in terms of actual values. The moment I look at this number, I know its tolerance, and what is given? Average value plus or minus peak deviation, right, average value plus or minus peak deviation, right. If I give standard deviation, again I will have to specify that it is standard deviation, right. These are customs, these are practices that have taken over the years and standardized, so that each one understands the other one what the person is saying. Okay. Now, accuracy tells me, if I look at my expression, how close I am to the truth, right, or the true value. Precision tells me how repeatable I am, right. If I take 100 measurements, how close all these 100 measurements are. It does not tell me about anything about how close I am to the truth. One way of really understanding accuracy and precision is something, we go back to a game called the dartboard. I do not know how many of you have played a dart, right. It is a small arrow, you stand at a point and start throwing at the board, right. The board has something like this. So, the innermost will be highest point 50, this is 100, this is 200, 500 and so on. There will be several rounds, and there are also some small strips, right, in all this. It is a kind of a popular game, right. And if I am throwing dots, right, and then I throw some 10 dots, and then all the 10 have landed there, right. Now, one thing I know is I am precise. Every time I throw at the same point, but I am not accurate. Accurate means I should have hit the bullseye. The center point is known as the bullseye, right. I should have bullseye. So, this is precise, but not accurate. Right. Now, I started throwing one more time, right. This time I had put all this, all the dots have gone there, right. So, now this is, let me put a circle over it, so that we know it is a second attempt. So, this is precise and accurate. Okay. And there is a third time. This time my hand is, actually I have done twice, right. So, my hand is really aching. I start throwing haphazardly. I will put a triangle, right. Those are the third attempts, right. I have really got disorientated, and then I throw all over the board, right. So, I am neither repeating my performance nor I am close to the target, right. So, the triangular wala is neither precise nor accurate, right. I repeat, accuracy tells us how close we are to the true value, precision simply tells us how repeatable my measurements were, right. The one example that you can give for precision, right, is a dead watch, right, a watch that stopped working. Okay. Now, I look at now, it tells 8:45, 10 minutes later I look at it, it tells 8:45, 2 days later I look at it, it tells 8:45. The readings are absolutely repeatable. My watch is very precise, but of course I know it is not accurate, and so it is not usable. Now, when we talked about systematic and instrument errors, we wanted to look at how these errors propagate when we compute different quantities using measured values, right. And when we have random errors, again it may so happen that I use those values to compute something else. So, how does the random error propagate, right. So, if I look at, I have two values u plus or minus sigma u comma v plus or minus sigma v, and I compute w from u and v. And if I write like this, I do not really have to put the symbol. What does it u mean? It is average value of all the measurements that I made for u, right. V is average value of all the measurements I made for v, right. So, or I can put this as very specifically u bar and v bar, right. And u, I assume I have made n measurements, and v I have made m measurements, because these are two independent measurements. One I could have made 100 measurements, another I could have made 150 measurements, right. Now, what would be the value of plus or minus sigma w, right. Okay. Now, if I assume that u, the variable is I, so I have u1, u2, u3, u4, u5, un, right, and the v for j, I put the variable j, v1, v2, v3 up to vm, right. Now, I can have several combinations of w. I can take u1 add with v1, I can take u1 add with v2, I can take u1 add with v3, and so on. Similarly, I can take u2 add with v1, v2, v3, and so on. So, if I look at the w, I will have m into n possible combinations, right, would be equal to u I plus v j, right. There are several ways of combining the two measured values. So, if I look at the average value of that is w bar, right, 1 by 1 by sigma I comma j, I equal to 1 to n comma m, right. On the right hand side, I will have sigma I comma j, I equal to 1 to m comma n u I plus v j 1 by mn, right, 1 by mn, because I am going to get mn combinations of w, right. Now, if I look at the ui, right, if I look at ui, when j goes from 1 to n, what will happen? When j goes to 1 to m, so this must be n comma m. When j goes to 1 to m, ui, when j equal to 1 I have ui, when j equal to 2 I have ui, when j equal to 3 ui. So, I will simply add ui plus ui plus ui plus ui m times, right. So, now I can put this as 1 by mn into m times sigma ui I equal to 1 to n, right. Similarly, for Vj, when I is going from 1 to n, right, I will have n times Vj. So, plus sigma j equal to 1 to m, I will have to put n by mn Vj. This is m cancels out, 1 by n sigma I equal to 1 to n ui plus 1 by m sigma j equal to 1 to m Vj. Now, this is u bar plus v bar. So, now I can write w bar is equal to u bar plus v bar, right, w bar equal to. Similarly, if I want to find out the standard deviation, right, standard deviation of w is 1 by mn, right, 1 by mn sigma I comma j I comma j n comma m w bar w I j minus w bar whole square. Now, I will have to put square root, instead of square root I put square on this side, right, because every time I will have to write square root, square root, square root. So, instead we find out what is sigma w square, and then finally I take square root, I will get sigma w, right. So, this again I can rewrite it as 1 by mn sigma I comma j n comma m w I j I know is u I plus v j minus w bar is u bar plus v bar, right. Just now we found whole square, right. So, this I can write it as 1 by mn sigma I comma j n comma m ui minus u bar whole square plus v j minus v bar whole square minus, because this is a minus b whole square, a square plus b square minus 2 u I minus u bar into v u I minus u bar v j minus v bar. Okay. What I have done is u I minus u bar I have put it 1, v j minus v bar I have put it as 1, right, because this is a plus b whole square I will have to have minus 2 u. I am summing over I comma j. What is the sum of v u I minus u bar over the entire data? This is sum of deviations, that is equal to 0. So, this is 0. Similarly, when I sum over j, that would be 0, v j minus v bar and u I minus u bar summed over its entire data set would be 0. So, now here again when I take I going from j going from 1 to m, it is going to be ui ui ui, right. So, I will have again 1 by n sigma I equal to 1 to n u I minus u bar whole square plus 1 by m sigma j equal to 1 to m v j minus v bar whole square. This is nothing but sigma u square plus sigma v square, right. I have here used the RMS deviation, it does not matter even if you use standard deviation, the results would be the same, right. It is not going to be very different. So, the variance of the sum set is equal to sum of the individual variances. Sigma square we already said is a variance. Okay. So, we stop here, we will continue in the next class.